Hi everyone, we're going to discuss technological pedagogical content knowledge in this short video. Please watch this video after you watch the one that I have created about pedagogical content knowledge, because the concept of technological pedagogical content knowledge very much draws on Schulman's concept of pedagogical content knowledge. It's basically looking at how does technology interrelate, and it is stressing the idea that if we're going to integrate technology into our teaching, we've got to do it in a way that interrelates the various aspects of pedagogy and content knowledge. So here we go into an introduction. Technological pedagogical content knowledge, you'll sometimes see it abbreviated as TPACK. Sometimes the A is left off, so you'll see it as TPCK in some articles. It describes the relationships between technological tools and pedagogical practices. Remember, when we talk about pedagogical practices, I'm sure most of you know in my classes, pedagogical practices, that's a fancy word for saying strategies of teaching, methods of teaching, including how do you plan instruction, how do you implement instruction, and how do you assess instruction, then how do you use the feedback from your assessment to further inform your teaching practices. TPACK, or Technological Pedagogical Content Knowledge, describes relationships and interactions, both this interplay and the relationship between knowledge of curriculum content, pedagogy, technologies, and contextual factors that influence the way that students learn and the way students become engaged. Notice all of these interrelations that are going, and you've got to understand all of them. You've got to understand your curriculum, you've got to understand your content that you're teaching, your teaching strategies, how to use technologies and what these technologies are, as well as the context of learning. It's all interrelated if you're going to use technology properly. That's what TPACK in a nutshell is saying, is that technology itself is not a magic pill. Just because you use technology, it may be the greatest technology in the world, that doesn't mean that your teaching is going to be excellent unless you're interrelating it with other best practices of instruction, including content, technology knowledge, and pedagogical knowledge. When we talk about content knowledge, and you should remember this from the previous discussion of pedagogical content knowledge from Schulman in another video that I made. And like I said, I mean these two videos to be companion pieces. Content knowledge is the teacher's knowledge about the subject matter that students will learn. For instance, if you are an English teacher, then content knowledge relates to your knowledge of English studies, the grammar, the literature. If you're a social studies teacher, if you're a social studies teacher, then content knowledge relates to your knowledge of the broad field social studies, history, civics, political science, economics. Content knowledge includes knowledge of concepts, the theories of this concept, the ideas, the frameworks that are common to the field. If you're teaching math, the mathematical proofs, the evidence within math, the knowledge of concepts within math, the theories within math, the frameworks that hold our understandings of mathematics together. And then from there, from content knowledge, we quickly get into technological content knowledge. Technological content knowledge describes how subject matter is taught and how it can be taught using information communications technologies. Content knowledge is the teacher's knowledge of the subject matter. Again, theories, evidence, and it differs according to the discipline and the grade level, of course. Just because you've got strong content knowledge in language arts at the elementary level doesn't necessarily mean that you've got strong content knowledge of English language arts as appropriate at the high school level, or vice versa. With social studies, your knowledge of content knowledge that's needed to teach senior levels students is different than your level of content knowledge needed to teach at the elementary school. With technological content knowledge, again, these two are interrelated. You've got to have your content knowledge. You've also got to have your technological content knowledge. They interrelate. Technological content knowledge describes how subject matter content is changing because of information communications technologies, how our knowledge of English is changing, and how our knowledge of how to teach English is changing, for instance. It also describes how to select technologies that best support the teaching of this concept, of this content. How do you best use certain technologies to teach social studies, for instance? Then we get into pedagogical knowledge. And you might remember this from our discussion of Schulman's pedagogical content knowledge. Pedagogical knowledge is the teacher's understanding of the processes and practices or methods of teaching and learning. It's basically pedagogy, right? The pedagogical knowledge is the type of stuff you typically tend to learn in School of Education type of courses, in methods courses, or courses with names like curriculum and instruction, or methods of teaching English, methods of teaching social studies, or content area reading. Those sort of courses are supposed to give you strong pedagogical knowledge. And then interrelated with pedagogical knowledge is technological pedagogical knowledge. Technological pedagogical knowledge is the use of technologies to inform your pedagogy. You have to understand the nature of your students. Are they going to be more or less receptive to certain technologies? You have to have a strategy for evaluating how the students react and how the students perform, whether they are learning up to a certain expectations or not. You have to understand the cognitive, social, and developmental theories of learning and how they are applied for the students in the classroom. That's again, application of theory to practice goes into pedagogical knowledge as well as technological pedagogical knowledge. Further on to pedagogical content knowledge. And again, technological pedagogical knowledge, I don't want you to get confused. Technological pedagogical knowledge is basically how to use technology in the concept of pedagogical content knowledge. Pedagogical content knowledge deals with relationships between pedagogical practices and the meeting of learning objectives. Do you want to use direct instruction? Do you want to use cooperative learning? Do you want to use the I do it, we do it, you do it approach? And how is this related to making sure that your students in your classes are meeting learning objectives? If we then flip the switch and turn this into technological pedagogical knowledge, it would be how to use technology to inform your pedagogical practices so that students can best meet their learning objectives. See how that works. The teacher's knowledge of practices, processes, and methods of teaching and learning go into what we think of as pedagogical content knowledge. And then when we get into technological pedagogical content knowledge, what that means is the teacher's knowledge of how to use technology to inform practices, processes, and methods of teaching and learning. This all includes the aims and goals of teaching, common norms, and norm means ethics of teaching, the planning of instruction, implementation of instruction, teaching strategies, and assessments. And with technological pedagogical content knowledge, we would talk about how to best use various forms of technology in the aims of teaching, the norms of teaching, how to plan instruction, implement your teaching strategies, as well as how to assess student learning and get feedback to inform your instruction based upon this assessment. Further on into pedagogical content knowledge, we're talking about the teacher's knowledge of teaching and learning, the curriculum development as well as student assessment. It deals with promotion of learning. It deals with linking pedagogy and curriculum and assessment together. PCK involves connections between the content and the pedagogy that's used to communicate about the content. Further into technological content knowledge, the teacher's understanding of how technology and content can both interrelatedly inform and influence student learning. It also involves understanding how the subject matter can be communicated using various technological systems, computers or the internet and all kinds of technologies. We can use the iPhone. Um, it also means considering which specific technological tools might be best suited for specific subject matters in classrooms and learning situations. Remember, very context specific here. Technological knowledge means the teacher's knowledge of and ability to use technologies and technological tools. Unfortunately, many teachers struggle in this area, especially when it gets really specifically intertwined in with pedagogy. Technological knowledge describes understanding and using educational technology to assist students, to grant students increasing independence, and to adapt technologies in the context of teaching. It's very important to learn how to use technology in the classroom. Teachers need knowledge and experience for the use of information and communications technologies. Teachers also need preparation for the effective use of ICT in teaching. And we see this with COVID-19. One problem with COVID-19, with responding to the COVID-19 is lack of infrastructure, the lack of preparation to meet the digital gap, but also many teachers were feeling frustrated because now all of a sudden they were thrust into fully online situations with little support and little knowledge in how to use technologies. Even after the COVID-19 crisis, we are still living in a digital age. And so I'm willing to bet that technology will be in a very, very important part of your classroom teaching, whether it's online, face-to-face, or blended. When I say blended, a blended class is one that combines aspects of face-to-face with online instruction. You will need technology, and so it's very important to study various technologies that are out there and how to combine them with your pedagogy. But remember, no magic pill. You've got to use technology in a way that is closely informed by best practices of teaching. Then finally, we get into technological pedagogical content knowledge. It emphasizes the interactions between content, pedagogy, and technology. It describes the knowledge base for teachers to effectively teach with technology, and also is traditionally understood as linking with Schulman's concept of pedagogical content knowledge. That's why I say please watch that other video that I've made about that. When we talk about technological pedagogical knowledge, we're talking about the teacher's understanding of how technologies both can change and shape learning, understanding how teaching tools can be used alongside pedagogy in ways that are appropriate for the discipline as well as the development of the lesson. In a nutshell, as we prepare to close things out, TPACK is talking about concepts from the content that you're teaching English, social studies, science can be taught representing technology. And you know how to do that by having knowledge of technology and knowledge in the use of that technology as appropriate for your content area. Pedagogical techniques can communicate content in different ways using technology. Different content concepts require different sets of skills by the teacher and the students. Educational technology can help address some of these requirements. Students come into the classroom with different backgrounds, different needs, different interests, including prior educational experiences and various levels of exposure to different types of technologies. And so we can help train the students in their use of educational technology. Educational technology can be used in combination, in tandem with students' existing knowledge, drawing out that students' existing knowledge, helping them to strengthen their prior epistemologies, as belief systems, as well as prior knowledge, in order to develop new ones. Teachability is very important to consider. This is a shifting concept. The ability to use technology, as well as the identity of yourself as being, let's say, a digital native or a digital immigrant, someone who's comfortable using technology or not comfortable using technology. Teachability deals with your knowledge of technological tools, your ability to operate specific information communications technology applications, ability to learn how to use them, your comfort level in learning how to use them, as well as having a functional technology of various information communication technologies. An important thing to remember here is that there is no one best way to integrate technology into the curriculum. Rather, integration efforts should be creatively designed or structured for particular subject matter ideas in specific classroom contexts. Finally, just a reminder, when we talk about TPACK, technological pedagogical content knowledge, remember the knowledge and skills to integrate subject matter of your content that you're teaching, how you're teaching it, meaning your pedagogy, as well as the technology, need to be interrelated. Context needs to be carefully considered. Don't think that you can go with a cookie cutter use of technology that is a one size fits all type of approach. That won't work. You've got to consider context. Here's a common diagram of what we mean by technological pedagogical content knowledge. Notice here you've got your knowledge of technology, technological knowledge. You've got your technological pedagogical knowledge in here that intersects with pedagogical knowledge, knowledge of teaching, strategies. You've got your content knowledge, your knowledge of English language arts or social studies, knowledge of pedagogical content knowledge, knowledge of how to teach, in other words, right in here. And it's interrelated right in the center. When you effectively are combining all of this, you've got effective use of what we call technological pedagogical content knowledge. Remember, TPACK involves the use of technology to teach content. It also involves using technology in a way that increases student learning as well as student engagement. And context matters. Cultural backgrounds of your students, the students' individual backgrounds, possible socioeconomic status, especially if you're using technology for them to take home, and we're possibly talking about things like digital gap, lack of access to the internet, school environment, as well as the support systems in the school. Okay, so I kept this relatively short. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Have a good day.